Sometimes family isn't perfect. That doesn't mean they aren't good. That was close. I don't think you're supposed to drink that.
So the upcoming live-action Lilo and Stitch 2 could really go in all sorts of directions because there are already a ton of stories from the original franchise that it might pull from. It's basically a follow-up to the 2025 Lilo and Stitch, which itself was a live-action remake of Disney's 2002 animated classic. That remake turned out to be a massive hit, earning more than $950 million worldwide on what reportedly was just a $100 million budget. No wonder Disney wants to keep that momentum going. Now, the sequel was officially announced in June, but Disney's kept pretty quiet about what it's actually going to be about. All we really know so far is what the first live-action movie hinted at, like the fact that Angel and Leroy exist in this universe and a few teases from the director, Dean Fleischer Camp. He suggested that Captain Gantu, who many fans of the original definitely remember, might show up in the next installment. If Disney decides to take inspiration from what's already out there, they certainly have no shortage of material to work with. They could easily pull from any of the animated sequels or even episodes of Lilo and Stitch the series, which was all about Lilo and Stitch hunting down Jumba's other experiments that escaped before Stitch, who's actually Experiment 626. That show alone set up so many story possibilities. Probably the most obvious storyline they could adapt is from Lilo and Stitch 2, Stitch Has a Glitch, which went straight to video back in 2005. Even though it was technically the third movie made in the franchise, it actually sits between the original 2002 film and 2003 Stitch the movie in the overall timeline. That one has a pretty dramatic plot. Stitch starts to malfunction, and Lilo and her ohana have to scramble to figure out how to save him before it turns deadly. It's a solid emotional story that's already feature-length, but here's the catch. This movie didn't include Gantu, and since Fleischer Camp has already been dropping hints about bringing Gantu back, it might mean that Stitch Has a Glitch isn't exactly what he has in mind for the sequel. Plus, in the live-action remake, Jumba was changed quite a bit. He went from being a morally questionable but mostly friendly ally to a full-on antagonist. So if they did adapt this story, they'd probably have to shuffle around who plays what role, maybe even making Jumba more of a villain again. Another route Disney could take is adapting Stitch the movie, which came out in 2003. This was the first sequel made after the original and basically set up the entire animated series. It introduces this idea that there are hundreds of other experiments out there, which opens up endless opportunities for future stories. The only complication is that in Stitch the movie, Gantu kidnaps Jumba to get information on all the other experiments. Given how the live-action version set up those characters where Jumba isn't really part of Lilo's family, this would definitely require some reworking. But on the bright side, pulling loosely from this story would give the sequel a natural way to start introducing all those other experiments that the 2025 remake teased. Then there's the idea of adapting episodes directly from Lilo and Stitch the series. At first glance, that might sound like a stretch since the show assumed the whole premise of hunting down experiments was already in place. But there's actually a smart way they could handle it. The movie could start with a condensed version of Stitch the movie, sets everything up, and then dives into one of the standalone episodes as the main plot. For instance, take the episode Yin Yang from Season 1. It shows Lilo and Stitch getting into an argument, splitting up, and then each chasing a different experiment. The experiments themselves are dangerous because if they come together, they could literally destroy the planet. It's a fun setup that also forces the characters to learn how to resolve conflict, all while keeping those big blockbuster-level stakes. There's also the episode Amnesio, which has an experiment that causes memory loss. Lilo ends up forgetting everything and thinks she's a cop chasing down Stitch. It could be a really playful way to mix up the characters' relationship and show them in a totally new light, plus it opens the door for some genuinely funny moments. Another strong contender is 627, where Jumba creates a new experiment that's basically an upgraded version of Stitch but way more evil. The live-action movie already hinted at this character by showing Experiment 627's silhouette, so it'll be a natural next step. And if they keep Jumba as a villain, it'll make total sense for him to be behind creating another destructive experiment. Then there's the Asteroid, another episode that could be easily expanded into a full movie. It revolves around an asteroid on a collision course with Earth, which is already a solid disaster movie premise. But it goes deeper emotionally too, since they discover the asteroid is actually home to an alien. That forces Lilo and Stitch to grapple with the idea that saving their own home would destroy someone else's. Of course, if Disney wants to lean into romance, they've got the perfect opportunity with Angel. She's Experiment 624 and serves as Stitch's love interest. Angel is super popular in Lilo and Stitch merchandise, especially those his and her sets you see everywhere. Plus, she was teased in the 2025 movie when Jumba scrolled through his list of experiments. Bringing her in now would not only build on that tease, but also give the franchise more emotional depth. Swapper is another episode that could translate well to the big screen. It involves an experiment that swaps people's bodies, leading to all kinds of chaos. Imagine Stitch having to throw a party while stuck in Lilo's body. That alone could carry half of a movie. And with the body swap genre making a comeback thanks to movies like Freakier Friday, this would be a smart way to tap into that trend. Skip is also worth mentioning. It has Lilo accidentally jumping forward in time 10 years at a time and seeing how things have changed without them around. It deals with growing up and the passage of time in a surprisingly moving way. In the original episode, Lilo and Stitch's absence allows the experiments to take over the world. They could tweak this by having Jumba fill in as the villain instead of the show's Dr. Hamsterville, who hasn't shown up in the live-action world yet. Wishy-Washy, on the other hand, leans into the emotional side. Lilo ends up wishing her sister Nani and Nani's boyfriend David were married so she could have a family photo for hula school. It's sweet but chaotic and would fit perfectly because the live-action remake already leaned heavily into the sister's struggle after losing her parents. It'll be a natural progression of that theme. Now, when it comes to how Disney will actually release Lilo and Stitch 2, nothing official has been announced. But it's pretty safe to assume it'll hit theaters. After all, the first live-action film made almost $1 billion. There's no way Disney wouldn't want to replicate that. If it does go theatrical, it'll be a first for the franchise since all the other sequels went straight to TV or video. That approach still worked well back then and might even reach more people today with streaming, but it doesn't have the same event movie feel as a big theatrical release. Plus, if this sequel does well, it could open the door for even more movies. So far, only a handful of Disney's live-action remakes have actually gotten sequels, like Mufasa: The Lion King, which followed up the 2019 version of The Lion King. Both that film and Lilo and Stitch 2 are building off huge box office successes, which shows Disney is willing to keep a remake series going if the numbers are strong enough. There's just so much untapped potential with Lilo and Stitch. The animated series alone introduced tons of experiment and wild stories that could keep the franchise alive for years. If the second movie does even half as well as the first, Disney might finally decide to adapt more of that content. So whether it's experiments running wild, Stitch finding love, or Lilo learning what family really means all over again, the future for this little blue alien and his ohana looks pretty bright. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Your suggestions for future videos are always welcome in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay in the loop, and if you want, you can share your thoughts about this video in the comments.